Hello dearies, welcome back to the Craft Kitchen. This is Tina from FriedaFriemel, and today I'm going to show you my first experiment with my watercolors I've purchased in a thrift shop in the Netherlands. This box also, they fit in here perfectly. So yeah, some of the watercolors in the tubes have had already dried out. So I just cut open the color tubes and pulled out sort of chalk pieces of watercolor, grinded them, and then just reactivated them with water. I've also mixed some of the powders with distilled water to create some watercolor sprays, in fact. In this case, this is vermilion. This is this color. And yes, I've labeled all of this, so I do know which color. In fact, these cheap colors always come in the same color range. There's always vermilion, orange yellow, lime yellow, burnt sienna. They do always have the same color names, which doesn't mean that the colors always look the same. Of course. So first things first. A few days ago I've watched a video of Alison from Words and Pictures. She's been making some tags with distress oxides in autumn colors, and I do like autumn colors very much. In fact, I'm the autumn type, always wearing autumn colors like this and the brown and so on. So I thought to myself, why not try making these autumn color backgrounds with watercolors instead of distress spray oxides, which are first very expensive, and secondly, I don't think you need the oxide effect if you don't want to have some kind of grungy look. Well, I'm not using these oxides for spring themed or autumn themed color sets, because the colors really do speak for themselves. So now, yes, I've been testing some of my colors on very cheap watercolor paper, 300 GSM, the usual stuff. I've sprayed on this orange yellow and then just splattered with the vermilion from this palette. So there have been more pigments in here, and yeah, what happened was my spray color just spread it on the whole paper, so the orange yellow spray. Of course it did, because it has loads of water in it, and I was moving this card a bit around, and then I did have a, yeah, let's say second layer of water. I forgot, before you paint on watercolor paper, you want to get it in the tiniest bit wet with a paintbrush, for example. So I did have a second layer of water, and the water flew into one another, of course, and then I've added a third layer of water with the vermilion pigments. So yeah, I do actually like the outcome, but this was not what I was going for. So I've been taking another piece of the same watercolor paper and just painted on this with the color I did want. Didn't use any red here, but this sienna, and just tried to spread out the splatters the tiniest bit. I'm very new to this. I actually need some practice, but you can guess this will be a fall background. So, and then I thought, okay, I do actually want to have these defined edges, which you can't achieve on watercolor paper, of course, because the paper is itself, it's very rough, and the colors tend to flow into one another, which is what you do want. So I thought, why not just use mixed media paper for this? And look at this. There are the edges I did want for this. Yeah, I've just sprayed on one layer of the orange yellow spray on here and moved the card around a bit. These splatters accidentally happened when I was splattering on some other cards. Sometimes you have to go with the flow and you have no time to clean up. Yeah, well, I forgot to clean up. So yeah, I really do like this. But this is, yeah, actually more grungy. There, because you do have the dark spots and this frayed edges here. But I don't mind, because, yeah, you know, now I know how to use these colors to create a grunge background. But let me show you, of course, these two colors. It's the same color. It's this spray sprayed twice on the paper, so this should be the same amount of color on here, on the papers, but the colors are very different. So I'm going to do what we all should do. I'm going to make some swatches for my new colors, but not only painting and naming them. I'm going to make swatch cards with different papers, different styles of usage. Just let me show you. This is my idea book. In fact, the first journal I have ever made. Very thick. There. Loads of papers, of pages in here. So let me find my schematics for this. Nope. There you are. Hopefully you can see this somehow. So I already knew I did want to have kind of a long, small strip, a card, a small card, showing different techniques using the watercolor on it. And then I was thinking, should I only do this on the mixed media paper? I'm using the Clairefontaine only, or on watercolor paper. And I've decided I'm going to make both. Mixed media paper as well as watercolor paper. And then I just drew this very rough schematic. So I'm going to use the spray technique, then the paint technique, and I actually will, yeah, I don't know what this is called in English, kind of dilute the color and spread it over the paper. Then I'm going to be using splatters on a watered piece of paper, and of course some splatters on non-watered paper. And I'm just putting in a hole and keeping all my cards together somehow, with a ribbon, with a ring binder, maybe with a piece of wire, just a paper clip, you know? I've already decided how long and how wide I do want my paper strips, my swatch cards to be. I've just calculated how I do get the most out of my paper. So I'm using A4 paper. This is what we do have here in Germany. So I'm just going to cut this in half, which will be 14.85 centimeters each, in my case. And then I've just calculated how many pieces I can get out of my width, which is 21 centimeters, which led me to 4.2 centimeters in width per each card. So I will have 5 cards from one and 5 from the other. So I already will have 10 cards out of this. They don't have to be really big, because when you're taking your cards, just holding them against your project and just decide what color you want to use. Really, this width already is enough to check if you're using this or another color. And I'm going to do this with watercolor paper, of course, and mixed media paper, because I'm going to be using these colors, the watercolors, on both papers. And yeah, dearies, for swatching your colors, this is very important. You have to have in mind that you may be using your colors, your pens, whatever, on different papers regularly, and you actually want to see how they turn out on this or that paper. And if you're also using different techniques, I'd recommend you use these techniques on your swatch cards as well. I've cut all my cards and already punched the holes in there. So I have to make sure I keep them separated. Well, actually you can see the difference. So I'm taking one card each. There. Placing them in my spray booth kind of thing. So let's see, I'm not measuring, I'm just eyeballing this. There you go. It's kind of a square, and I'm starting with my orange color. And like with these distress spray oxides, you have to shake up your color spray very, very well, because actually, let me be very careful. No, I've shaken it too much. The chalk and the other particles in here will fall down to the bottom of your spray bottle. Also the pigments. So yeah, you do this is already cloaked. Let me see. Yeah. So this is what my spraying is doing. I've sprayed my color on the watercolor paper dry. There you go. So I actually can see what this is doing when I'm using dry paper, because for the wet color I'm going to be using this middle part here and just painting on. So now I do have to let this dry. I like to let this dry very slowly, because I found when you're using a heat gun to dry your watercolor, it can't actually do the real magic watercolor is doing. I'm just going in with a piece of paper towel to help it dry. There you go. Just lifting up a bit of this color. I do want to let this dry this spot here by itself, because I do want to see what it's looking after it has dried. Maybe it also will have this beautiful frayed edge at the end. So I'm taking these aside, letting them dry. Going over here the tiniest bit, just to make it dry. Taking my card. You could also use a kind of plastic card, or yeah, an acetate sheet for this, I think. So, and I do want to clean my nozzle on here, and I do have to check why this is already clogged later. So now I'm doing the same with the red color. Placing this here, eyeballing where I don't have to eyeball this. Look, I do have kind of a measurement. I've placed some copy paper, 100 GSM. I'm using for my coffee dyed paper, etc. Just to see what the watercolor spray is doing on this paper. So I'm going to be taking the green just to have the tiniest bit of contrast. There you go. Shaking these up. Let's see. Yeah, not cloaked at all. There you go. And again, I'm going in with a paper towel to remove a bit of the excess here, just to help it dry. And moving it aside. And here, there's too much color going on. And maybe I've sprayed too much on here to have the real effect later on. Maybe somewhere here. Moving this a bit to build kind of some puddles, because the effect I'm looking for, this is already drying, is this. Yeah, you can see the frayed edges. Let me show you the watercolor card. This takes a bit longer. We do have white spots underneath here on the mixed media paper, and the lighter spots on the watercolor paper are still orange. I like it very much. Yeah, if taking no water, just using this dry spray technique, the outcome is kind of similar. I'm doing this with all my colors, and then I'll be back. Now, most of my cards have been dried, the sprayed spots, and actually I did want to use the original colors from the tubes to paint on this, but this doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm using the colors in the spray bottles because these are the same I've sprayed on here, and they contain the same amount of pigments when I do brush them on here, like the sprayed parts. If I'd use the original colors, the amount of pigments would be very different from this here. So let me open this up. Just, yeah, this is still the tiniest bit damp. pick up some colors here carefully, not to knock this over. And now I'm starting with the full color on here, like so. Same I do on the mixed media paper. This is a bit difficult here. Then I'm going to wash my brush and get it the tiniest bit dry, like so, and take on some clean water. Just place my brush in here and I am blending the color the tiniest bit. So, and now I'm going to let this dry, doing the same on the watercolor paper. Again, blending there, like so, there, and letting this dry. And I'm going to do this with all my colors. One thing I do want to show you before these are dry. So this is the watercolor paper and this is the mixed media paper. As you can see, the dried edges are looking quite similar, whereas the structure of the paper there is still visible. But when you're using this kind of flat paper, so the mixed media paper, you have to be aware, can you see this? That your color is building some puddles there, and it will still be moving around the tiniest bit. I'm going to let this dry because, yeah, I actually do need a reminder for this. And dearies, of course, I didn't guess the colors I had to use. I wrote them on the back. I just wrote the names of the colors on the back, not the brand, because I already know this is just an experiment. I'm going to be using up these colors, of course, but if I like how they are turning out, and I actually like this very much, I'm going to buy some more expensive and, yeah, better watercolors. So, my cards have been dried, the colors have been dried, and now I'm going to be using the next technique I'm using very often in my projects on here. There you go. I'm just taking a piece of cardstock to cover this, like so. Then I'm using a brush to paint on some water here, not all the way down to the edge, but about, let's say, half of the blank space. And then I'm using a fan brush. I've cut down to about, let's say, 1 centimeter. This was the apple green. Again, using my colors from my spray bottles for this. There you go. And picking up some color from here and just splatter the color on the cards. So I will be able to see the difference between dry and watered spots there on watercolor paper and also on mixed media paper. I'm going to let this dry, and when I've finished all my colors, I'm going to show you the results. My watercolor swatches, my watercolor spray swatches are finished. On the top row there are the watercolor papers, and on the bottom row the mixed media paper. So yeah, now I've been watching these a while, and I have to admit I can't see a big difference on here. Yeah, well, I've not used the technique I've used on the card. I've shown you I've not wetted the paper and then used the spray. Most of this is, no, half of this is dry technique, and this is where I put on the color and blended it. And here I've splattered on a wet spot. This is the mixed media paper. This is the watercolor paper. Oh yeah, and I remembered this is a technique I'm also doing very often. Tiny splatters with white or black acrylic paint. So I thought, yeah, let's splatter these on the spray paint so I can see if I like the color combination or if I don't. Well, my husband asked me, since there's not a big difference in these, why I'm using watercolor paper as well as mixed media paper for my crafts. This is very simple. First of all, the mixed media paper I'm using I can get everywhere in town very easily. Yeah, also the watercolor paper, but if you're folding the mixed media paper, you will have a crisp fold here, and on the inside the tiniest bit of cracks. But if you do this with the watercolor paper, using a bone folder or scissors, whatever, to get a crisp fold. I don't know if you can see this. The texture on the paper will be pushed away by your tool. Let's see if I can. Yeah, maybe you can see this better now. So, no, yeah, there. You see this? The paper is very flat now, and I think, oh no, it's very sturdy. But when you fold this cheap paper over, this is what happens on the back side of the paper. And no, you can't make booklets with this or whatever. So I'm using both. I like to use the watercolor paper for tags and cards and stuff when I don't have a cardstock backing, maybe from packaging or some other cardstock, some ugly 12 by 12 for example. And this is what I'm using for cards mainly. This is the mixed media paper I'm using. So now let me see, we want to get these together. These are the mixed media cards, like so. And we want to put these together. So what you can use for this, to bind this, is mainly, of course, bookbinding rings, or even a wire, in this case a paper clip, or some sort of ribbon. I do have some laces in here too. So this is actually just some kind of plastic ribbon for gift ribbon. What else do we have? Yeah, of course, this fake leather ribbons. Or I do have here a very old ribbon used for underwear, to bind underwear. Or what else do we have? This is the same. No, this is actually a small piece of gift ribbon. I wouldn't recommend using sort of twines for this, because you could tear the holes apart. So I'm gonna be using the bookbinding ring for one. Like so. Very easy. Not that easy to close. There. And the paper clip just for the other one. We don't have that many cards here, so I'm just opening this up a bit, or maybe a bit more, like so, and just getting it over here. So we do have this binding. Of course, you could open up the paper clip completely and build sort of a ring. So now I do have this. I will have to go in with my pliers again. Yeah, so now you can see the spraying part with the black and white acrylic paint splatters, the painted part with the blending, then the splattering on the wet and dry parts on top. Of course, dearies, you can go crazy with this. Let's say you would make the cards a bit wider, maybe double as wide. You could also use your stamp, your favorite stamp color, to stamp some images on here and look how this would look, and see how this would look with the stamping on it. You also could use tissue paper to glue this on top, just to see how this would look. Maybe you're taking a bigger piece of watercolor paper or mixed media paper and glue some, don't know, coffee dyed paper on this, and let's say writing paper, and what else? Newspaper, and then just test how this will look with the colors on it and the different techniques. Really, there are no limits whatsoever. So, as you can see, I've only made 2, 4, 6, 7 colors. These will be my autumn colors. Yeah. So I'm putting these in here too, into my basket. This will go into my narrow shelf, where I do have all the colors and so on. And of course I'm going to make many more colors, but that's it for now. Hopefully you could get some information out of this video, and yes, see how fun and easy it can be to get to know your colors and your papers. And actually I think having these swatches with different techniques makes your crafting life way easier. So dearies, as always, thanks for watching, stay crafty and be excellent to each other. See you next time. Bye!